Hi, Mitch, please. Welcome to today's anti-election subversion pro-democracy variety hour with your host Davina from Australia. I live in America now, and I'm on board with the fact that white people need to start caring in greater numbers to reach a critical mass of people who care about and who take action to protect access to the vote for all Americans, but specifically the subset of Americans most targeted by Republican activity. And by that, I mean the Black Americans who are basically legislated against. Mark Elias is a lawyer who works for democracy, who works for Americans, who defended America in multiple cases that the Trump lawyers such as Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell brought against the results of the 2020 election in an effort to subvert the democratic exercise of power by a majority of the American people in the presidential election in 2020. Mark Elias is also working to challenge a lot of Republican gerrymandering and Republican provisions, new legislation, some that have already been passed and some that will be passed going forwards, that makes it more difficult to vote, that puts obstacles in the pathway of people who try to exercise the right to vote. Now, in Georgia, you might have heard of the legislation passed by a Republican-controlled legislature that says you can't anymore bring food or water to people standing in line waiting to vote. Now, Mark Elias said when he tells predominantly white, wealthy audiences about this, they can't see the problem. And he brings up a specific example that in the 6th district of Georgia, their precincts that have a predominantly white population had an average wait time for the primary elections of 6 minutes. 6 minutes standing in line to vote. It's just a procedure you can get over and done with quite quickly. If you lived in a precinct that was 90% majority Black population, your average wait time increased to 51 minutes. Now you can see how hard it is for the white people to relate. If you're waiting in line for 6 minutes, that's barely time to have a drink of water or something to eat. You have no need for it. It's just simply not in your sphere of concern. If you're someone who's brought your children along with you to vote, or who has to go back to a job, or who has to return to anything else going on in your life, 51 minutes is an extra hurdle, an extra obstacle that won't deter everybody, but it will deter some. And then making it illegal to hand out food or water to people stuck in a queue that's got a 51-minute at least wait time, that's thinning the crowd of potential voters even more and targeting that thinning mechanism at people of color, at communities that are predominantly people of color. And this is what white America needs to get its head around. Hey, if you're white and you already understand this, good for you, but these remarks are addressed to white Americans at a collective level, because it is at a collective level that we need to see change. So sure, if you're white, you understand, great. Understand that each of us have a town square of potential influence. You can talk to your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, and try and bring to people's attention, if they're a reasonable person. And granted, a lot of people currently aren't, but bring to their attention the fact that if you suppress access to the vote for enough Black voters, then you are creating an unaccountable political system. Because if access to voting is not free and fair amongst all Americans, you're legitimizing, or you're making it acceptable for Republicans to cull certain demographics of voters in order to cement their access to power. So if that's okay with you, if it's okay with you that they have a variety of strategies to thin the ranks of voters in predominantly Black communities, because they know that Black communities disproportionately vote for Democratic candidates, then you are ticking okay on them for exercising tyrannical tools of power, which will mean they are beyond the reach of voters. They can pander to voters who vote not logically, not rationally, not as good citizens, but purely as people loyal to the lies they have been told by right-wing extremist media. I'm going to call it extremist media because when something's detached from reality, you don't just get to call it the right-wing perspective anymore. So I'm going to call people right-wing extremists or left-wing extremists. A man in Georgia was arrested today for making threats against the life of two specific election officials. He took out an ad on Craigslist asking for fellow patriots to exercise their Second Amendment rights and put a bullet in two election officials, which he named them in a Craigslist ad. So yes, that man's efforts to murder other people were so clumsy that he attracted the attention of the authorities before he could take an election official's life. But we're in a climate now where the Trump brand of emboldened Republican strategizing has grown comfortable with escalating violent extremist rhetoric to the extent that multiple people in positions of authority, election officials, medical professionals, teachers, are under increasing verbal attacks and verbal threats to their life and written threats to their life. It's not a large leap to see that escalating into the real injury and death of health professionals, election officials, etc. Anybody who is now perceived to be an enemy of a Trump loyalist. So Trump out of office has not evaporated the destructive power of those ideas and those loyalties. That omnipotent, that idea of power that is shared by people who go all in with a set of shared beliefs that are not constrained by reality, that are just cemented together with a lot of repetition and a lot of appeal to the type of common sense that is founded in racist bias. The idea that real Americans are white Christian Americans or white Americans, and that America is under threat from outsiders or migrants or Mexicans or African Americans as distinct from Americans. Mitch, please. We need to counter their delusional outrage that they are somehow losing something because they're experiencing the discomfort of a worldview that no longer is a good fit for the world around them. If you have a worldview of white supremacy, if you have a worldview that white people will naturally always fill leadership positions, then President Obama upsets that and you join the Tea Party. People increasingly succeeding and the black middle class becoming increasingly visible on mainstream media, on entertainment avenues, etc., that hurts. If you find it difficult to believe, if you find it difficult to stretch your pre-existing understanding of the world to cover these new data points that you're surrounded with every day, if that makes you feel uncomfortable and edgy, then you can mitigate your existential unease by falling for the clear rhetoric, the clear hateful rhetoric of a bigot, an opportunistic bigot like Trump. Opportunistic because he didn't create bigotry, he pandered to it and he exacerbated it. Hate crimes reported to the FBI went up 300% under Trump. And we continue to deal with the fallout from his bigoted pairing of the COVID pandemic with the word China in order to deflect attention amongst his followers from his willful, negligent mishandling of the pandemic, and instead direct aggression and animosity towards people of Asian appearance in America. What can you do? So what I have up on the screen now is someone who's made a great thread about what happened 12 years ago today with the Supreme Court decision in Citizens United, because it gave corporations and the wealthy few even more access to influence and access to government. It brought us super PACs and dark money as we know it. I could call it shadow money as well, because I get tired of people using dark as a negative adjective. But anyway, the important thing here is really to highlight that decision 12 years ago, 2010 decision by the Supreme Court, the conservative stacked Supreme Court, to say First Amendment protections apply to money. It massively created unbalance in the scale. Instead of people being able to donate to political candidates, somehow corporations are now people and can donate money to super PACs, because that 1 degree of separation from a candidate evens out the harm it's doing, which is not the case. So, political influence and political power can be purchased much more easily since that date, since that poorly conservatively motivated decision from a conservative weighted Supreme Court bench. So let's go through this thread, because it's truths that white people have to hear. A lot of the bigotry and anti-migrant sentiments are often whipped up as a distraction and deflection strategy to stop people from examining the actual shadowy forces of influence, where people aren't accountable for donating billions of, well, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to different, to support different candidates, or to purchase an increased likelihood of different political outcomes that are desirable for them, such as ending women's access to their constitutionally protected right to exercise autonomy over their own body, or protect employees from travesties in the workplace, or to protect a country from an uncontrolled outbreak of a significant disease, because the Supreme Court justices have decided, the conservative Supreme Court justices have decided to overturn a government mandate to require vaccines or a weekly test for employees of a business with over 100 employees. So here we go. When the Supreme Court made that decision in 2010, yikes. The account, I'm reading from this account, it's Ian Vanderwalker. The court theorized that as long as spending is independent of candidates and parties, there's no danger of corruption. Well, that's not true, is it? The corruption is using wealth and power to purchase more wealth and power, to purchase the decisions you want from a government or a court or any branch of government that's more favorably disposed towards you, because you've lubricated their pathway with money. Money from a super PAC is still money. So the Brennan Center published an article 2 years ago saying 10 years of super PACs show that courts were wrong on corruption risks. Yes, it gives the wealthy undue influence over politics. We need to talk about this more. We need to appreciate how we need, first of all, the political will to say, keep pushing to overturn this decision, keep pushing to counter the impact of this decision, keep finding ways to reduce corruption and to reduce the purchasability of political power in the United States, to balance out, once again, the power of voting people against the power of corporations or people that have become unified in a goal of making more money and getting more power, potentially at the expense of the general public, because corporations don't always have systems of checks and balances to make them care about adverse effects that they can have on people around them. They don't necessarily care about how much pollution they cause or how much cancer toxic waste products cause in people. They only care when governance imposes limits on them and imposes scrutiny. Yes, big government is not the enemy, but conspiracy theorists are happy to try and fabricate elites who are the secret enemy in order to hide the actual elites who are secretly trying to corrupt and degrade governance in the United States and make more bad outcomes happen to more people. Outside spenders have pumped $7.4 billion into elections since 2010. The new rules allowed mega donors to give more and more, crowding out the small donations that regular Americans can afford. These are how normal people are getting crowded out of election influence. So all that money you make, are you able to donate to political candidates that you like? You're drowning in competition with corporate mega donors. So the darker blue portions are donors of $200 or less, and the blue ones are donors of more than $100,000. So you can see that's just increasing year by year. Presidential cycles 2008, prior to the Citizens United decision in 2010, and here 2012, 2016. I'm imagining 2020 up here as well. So that's all from me for today. I'm glad to have gone through this. When I say Mitch, please, I'm not just saying it to Mitch McConnell, I'm saying it to white people who don't yet take this seriously enough. Mitch's, please. You have to care about preserving access to the vote for Black Americans just as much as you care about your own access to the vote, because you too will suffer as democracy is swiftly and significantly eroded by all the Republican legislations, 20 bills that were passed in 2021, 200 more scheduled to be passed in 2022, that degrade the free and fair functioning of democracy. And when that's degraded, it's not just Black Americans who've lost political power. It is every single person participating in a democracy will be rigged in Republicans' favor. Thank you and goodbye.